Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most intimidating works in Western thought, the Summa Theologica. Now, I know, it's a medieval masterpiece that has puzzled people for centuries. But what if I told you there's a simple key to unlocking its genius? You know that feeling when you open a book and you're just completely overwhelmed? You're hit with this wall of dense, complex ideas, and it's so easy to feel lost. Well, that feeling is at the heart of our challenge today, a challenge that thinkers have been grappling with for hundreds of years. So here's the game plan. We're going to unpack the Summa Theologica by showing you the logical toolkit Aquinas used to build it. We'll start with why the text seems so tough, then we'll dive into his unique method. We'll even see how he argued for God's existence, look at how he saw faith and reason working together, and finally, we'll discover why this 800-year-old philosophy is, believe it or not, super relevant today. Okay, let's start with the big challenge itself. We're talking about a massive work of philosophy and theology written way back in the 13th century by Thomas Aquinas. It's legendary for its depth and, for being really, really hard to read. I mean, just look at the scale of it. The Summa contains over 3,000 articles, and each one tackles a specific question. It's less like a book you read cover to cover and more like this gigantic, interconnected database of logical arguments. So no wonder it seems so impenetrable when you first pick it up. But here's the thing. Aquinas wasn't just rambling on. He was building an entire system, and he used a clear, repeatable method for finding truth. Once you get the method, the whole thing just clicks into place. And this is the key that unlocks the whole thing. Every single one of those 3,000 articles follows this exact 5-step structure. He poses a question. Then, and this is the brilliant part, he lists the strongest arguments against the position he's about to take. He gives his opponents the first word. After a brief counter, he lays out his own detailed case. And then, to finish, he goes back and systematically dismantles each of those initial objections one by one. It's like a formal debate on the page, a really powerful toolkit for thinking through any complex idea. So let's actually see this toolkit in action. We're going to look at how Aquinas tackles one of the biggest questions of all. Does God exist? Now, what's so fascinating here is that Aquinas didn't think God's existence was just something you had to take on faith. He was convinced it could be demonstrated. He argued that by just observing the world around us, things we can see and understand with our own reason, we can logically trace everything back to its ultimate source. Aquinas laid out 5 famous arguments for this, which he called his 5 ways. We're going to walk through 3 of them, and we'll start with his third way, the argument from possibility and necessity. The logic here is actually pretty cool. Just look around you. Everything you see, a tree, a person, even a star, it comes into being and eventually it passes away. Its existence isn't guaranteed. It's what philosophers call contingent. But Aquinas asks, what if everything was like that? If every single thing could potentially not exist, then given enough time, there must have been a moment when absolutely nothing existed, right? But you can't get something from nothing. So the very fact that we are here, that stuff exists now, means there has to be at least one thing that isn't contingent, something that must exist, a necessary being. All right, building on that idea of a necessary cause, let's check out his 4th way, the argument from the gradation of being. This one's all about standards of perfection. We do this all the time. We say some actions are better than others, or some ideas are truer. But that implies we're measuring them against some kind of scale. And a scale only makes sense if there's a maximum, right? A perfect 10 out of 10. For Aquinas, that maximum standard of goodness, truth, and being can't just be an abstract idea. It has to be a real thing. And it must be the ultimate source of all the lesser degrees of perfection we see in the world. And that brings us to the 5th way, the argument from the governance of the world, or what a lot of people today would just call the argument from design. So for this one, Aquinas observes that even things without minds, like a planet orbiting the sun or a seed growing into a tree, act in consistent, purposeful ways. He uses a great analogy. An arrow doesn't fly to a target by itself. It needs an archer to aim it and shoot it. In the same way, Aquinas argues, the incredible order and goal-oriented behavior we see all over nature implies there must be some guiding intelligence directing everything to its proper end. So, all of these arguments, which are built entirely on reason and observing the world, they all point to one of the core themes of Aquinas' entire philosophy, the powerful, harmonious relationship between faith and reason. For Aquinas, these two were never in conflict. They were partners. He thought of reason as a natural light that God gave us, and it can take us a long way. Using our reason, we can prove that God exists. But it has its limits. That's where faith comes in. He saw faith as a kind of divine light, a spotlight that takes over where reason leaves off, revealing truths like the Trinity, things that are way beyond our reason's pay grade. So you can think of it like this. Reason builds the foundation, and faith builds the cathedral right on top of it. As Aquinas himself famously put it, grace does not destroy nature, but perfects it. In other words, faith isn't asking you to shut off your brain and stop thinking critically. Not at all. It builds on your reason, elevates it, and allows it to grasp even greater truths. And this powerful synthesis, this beautiful partnership of faith and reason, is exactly why 6 centuries after he died, the Catholic Church turned back to Aquinas to solve a very modern crisis. See, by the late 19th century, things had changed. Thanks to movements like the Enlightenment, philosophy and faith had been almost totally separated. And Pope Leo XIII saw this as a huge problem, a dangerous split. So in 1879, he issued a call to action. He argued that modern philosophy, by cutting itself off from faith, had basically created a chaos of conflicting ideas that was just leading to doubt and confusion everywhere. And what was his solution? Go back to Aquinas. Not to abandon reason, but to reunite it with faith, to restore that harmony of friendship and create a solid, stable foundation for making sense of the world again. Okay, so what does this all mean for us today? Why should we care about a 13th century theologian's logical toolkit here in the 21st century? Well, because in our modern world of chaotic information, of social media echo chambers, his rigorous, honest approach to thinking is more valuable than ever. I mean, think about it. His method literally forces you to understand and clearly state the strongest arguments against your own position before you're even allowed to make your case. That's a masterclass in intellectual honesty. It's a way of thinking that values clarity over just being clever, and it values genuine understanding over just winning an argument. Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, right? In our fast-paced, overloaded world, how different would our debates, online and off, be if we all just slowed down and adopted a little bit of that 800-year-old structured discipline?